Hey there, listeners. Are you feeling the weight of the world? Well, you're not alone. The U.S. Surgeon General says nearly 50% of parents are overwhelmed by stress. And guess what? It's affecting us all. Just last year, we heard about an epidemic of loneliness hitting half our population, especially young adults. But there's hope. I'm Scarlett Lewis, founder of the Choose Love movement. We're dedicated to your safety, health, and well-being with proactive mental health strategies. Imagine a life where stress and loneliness are replaced by joy and connection. We've already reached millions with essential life skills to prevent violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. Want to join this life-changing movement? It's easy. Visit chooselovemovement.org today. Become a member, spread the word, and access our free resources. Together, we can create a loving, supportive community. Remember, all the nurturing, healing love you give comes back to you tenfold. Thank you for choosing love.
I choose love. I choose love.
Hey everybody, my name's Scarlett Lewis. I'm the founder of the Choose Love movement. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Mark Hulsewe, a filmmaker, speaker, and advocate who's working to change the way we think about bullying, violence, and school safety. Mark is the creator of the short film In Plain Sight, which has been recognized at film festivals for its powerful storytelling and its unflinching look at the human cost of bullying. He's also a TED Talk speaker, known for his talk, The Great Rescue, Ending School Shootings, where he explores how violence is often the tragic downstream effect of unresolved pain, exclusion, and bullying, and how prevention is possible. Drawing from his own lived experience as a victim of bullying, Mark focuses on proactive, human-centered solutions. He speaks about leadership, empathy, and practical frameworks like the HERO protocol, which we're going to go over later, which aim to rewire how schools and communities respond to pain before it turns into harm. You hear me in this, right? Mark's work asks an important and hopeful question. What if preventing violence isn't about fear and force, but about connection, compassion, and courageous leadership? I am really grateful to have him here today. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Scarlett. That was such a wonderful introduction. Thank you. It is such an honor to be here with you, to speak with you, to resonate on the same issue with you, because we're looking at it from a different angle compared to most of the nation. And it's just truly an honor to be here with you to talk about this, to bring actual pragmatic, actionable solutions to solve this once and for all.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say solve this, you're talking about solving what?
The school shooting epidemic in the United States, but also around the world, because it's not just in the US, it is a global issue, because the same issue that causes it here in the US causes it in other countries as well. It's the same root problem.
Yeah. And you know what? I am so into now lived experience experts. You know, the passion behind someone who has a story and who's found purpose in their pain is unparalleled. And I find that they understand, obviously, the situation as well as a search for the solution more than academics. And so that's why I'm so happy to have you on here, because you do have a story, Mark. You have a reason that you are pursuing this. And can you share that with us?
Yes. The reason why I am so driven on my mission is because it is a lived experience. I know why this keeps happening. It is because the children are brutal and sadistic to each other in the classrooms. That's the conversation that nobody is having. It's taught that bullying is kind of a very gaslit, sanitized word. What's actually happening is child-on-child abuse. When an adult abuses a child, the adult goes to jail. But when a child abuses a child, it's passively dismissed as kids will be kids, boys will be boys, and just deal with it. And that mentality is exactly why these kids are being driven to violence. And I'm tired of it being passively dismissed. My entire mission is bringing this subject to the forefront to actually do something about this once and for all, because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of nothing being really done about it other than defensive measures when the solution is in prevention.
It's so interesting because there was a bullying incident with my son after Jesse was murdered in the high school. And so I remember sitting in the vice principal's office, and he handed us, and it may have just been me, I can't remember if my son was there, but a packet that they give out evidently. And I was looking through it, you know, when there's a bullying incident, and there were 3 pages front and back of consequences within different levels. There was like level 1 bullying, level 2 bullying, level 3 bullying, and all consequences. And I remember folding it back, you know, swishing it back down the table to him as he had done to me, and saying, I'm not interested in the consequences. I'm interested in what is going on with this young man, the pain that he's in, so that you
Yes.
can help him. This is a cry for help. And I want
Yes.
to know how you're going to help him. I'm not interested in the consequences. And, you know, and that was kind of met with complete silence, because I don't think that there is a protocol in schools now to help kids who are in pain. I mean, you could say, well, wait a minute, there are counselors. Counselors have between, I think, 650 and 15,000 kids that they handle. So they're overwhelmed. I know that the vast majority, I think the last statistics I saw was 70% of kids do not get professional help that are suffering. So I really think, and my whole platform, Mark, is focusing on the pain that escalates into what later becomes bullying, violence, substance abuse, mental illness. But you said something that is pretty shocking, maybe to the audience, and something that I'd never considered either, that bullying does not adequately address what is actually happening, which is child on child abuse.
Yes, that is exactly what is going on. And it has been happening for decades. When I talk to adults about this, they go like, oh yeah, it happened in my school too. You know, we just dealt with it, you know, toughen up. You know, just these words are thrown around to deal with what is going on. And I'm really calling out why this is happening to begin with. Human beings are social creatures. Like that's primitive in our DNA, how we are, right? And children segregate each other based off of that hierarchy. There is the social hierarchy in our schools, in every single middle and high school across America. And at the top of this hierarchy is the jocks, the athletes. If you're wealthy, if you are attractive, you are on top of this social ladder, quote unquote. And then you have everyone in between just trying to fit in. And then you got the bottom of the barrel, the outcasts, the quote unquote the losers, the rejects, the people that have no friends because they don't fit into that specific social category. And what's happening in these schools most of the time is that those at the top of the ladder are sadistically brutalizing and abusing those at the bottom for entertainment. And that is the cold truth of what is going on. And that is what needs to be dissolved.
Okay,
And
now
fortunately,
you have likened
well,
that to the caste system in India,
yes,
right? I read that, and I thought that that was an interesting metaphor. And now you know this because of your own experience. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
yeah, I'll share a small piece of it. I was that outcast. You know, I'm a very tall man. I'm 6'9", and my size and stature is amazing now. But as a kid, it was the worst thing in the world. All of my peers, every last one of them made fun of me. They called me very, very horrible things. They told me very horrific things. And we can maybe have that discussion on another day. But every single year that went by, they were just destroying my soul. And I'm gonna use one example because this just has to be known. And if you need to bleep out these words, then it is what it is. In kindergarten, I remember I was called faggot, retard, and gay every single day, and I didn't know why. And then first grade, same situation.
Wait, in
Second grade,
kindergarten by who?
by my peers,
By kindergartners?
by kindergartners. Yes, they're not these little innocent little kids that just walk around and they're
Well, so
it's
they're
all boy.
learning that. They're learning that
Yes,
from somebody, right? Because
exactly.
you're not born understanding
Right.
terminology.
Right, but they have access to, we live in a very violent society and violent culture with tons of films that and music that talks about these things. So these kids are absorbing this information from their external environments and they're projecting that towards their peers unconsciously.
You know what's
I
kind
just
of interesting? There was research that I think it was in that culminated in 1998 that showed that by the time kids reach 18 years old, they would have seen 250,000 violent acts. And this was when there was TV. And so I have tried to look up the statistics using the cell phone now that we have first class tickets to the worst of humanity in our back pocket all the time. And of course, they're not out there because it's every day, all day long. And I just
yes.
wanted to insert that because it's true. We are exposing our kids to the worst of the worst. And we forget that we're supposed to be role models. And we forget that these little ears are listening to us all the time and watching what we do.
Yes, that's exactly what's going on. And the adults don't realize, the internet and that smartphone on their hands is a double-edged sword. And
So keep going.
unfortunately,
I want you to keep going with your own story.
Sure. So I was called this every single day, and because I used to be very introverted, I didn't say anything. I just kept it internalized until fourth grade. Fourth grade, I came back broken. Like one day, it was just really horrible. Like it was just a really bad day at the school. And I finally went to my father and mother about this. I was like, Mom and Dad, these kids are calling me this, and I don't know why. Like they're calling me these names, and I don't understand. I'm a kind human being. I wish the best for everyone. Why are they doing this to me? But I broke down in tears to them. I go like, just in confusion, right? I just didn't understand. Of course, both my parents, parental instincts kicked in. We're going to go to the principal's office right now, and we're going to solve this right now. So we take the drive to school in the morning. And I remember going to the principal's office with my parents. And I barely remember much of the conversation except for the last part. The principal asked my parents to leave the room. She says, "May I please have a word privately with me and Mark?" And my mom, she raises her eyebrow like, "What?" But she reluctantly left the room with my father. And I will never forget this. It's a core memory of mine. Without asking me any questions, zero questions. And mind you, I am 8 years old at this moment in time. She says, "Mark, it's okay to be gay." That was my brain and spirit shattered in half. And that evening, I attempted to end my life. I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't care about life anymore. And I just didn't care anymore.
Because
And that
you weren't seen, you weren't heard, and you didn't see anybody around you
zero,
that
zero. The all of my peers were against me, and the most powerful adult figure in that school backed what everyone else was saying without even asking me any questions at all. Now I'm sure in her brain she was like, "Oh, he's trying to come out of the closet." When I didn't even know I don't know what sex is. I don't know any of that stuff. I'm 8 years old. I'm just wanting to have friends. That's all I'm wanting to do. And that's what started my sort of downward spiral in life. And what Randy Brown talks about is the stages of school shootings. Is stage one is bullying, stage two is humiliation, stage three is hypervigilance, and that's the stage that I entered at that particular age. Hypervigilance is when the amygdala goes into hyper fight or flight mode, where it views everything as a threat, not just the kids who make fun of you, but the adults and the other students who passively stand by and watch and do nothing about it. So that happened at that stage. And then I just started just hating everything. And then around my high school around my high school year, I started having those thoughts of, wanting to enact revenge because I no longer cared about life. You
And I
know,
want to interject. I want to interject who Randy Brown is that you referenced. Randy Brown is the father of Brooks Brown. Brooks Brown was actually friends with Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who were the Columbine shooters. Randy is Brooks' father, who wrote a book, the inside story of Columbine: lies, cover-ups, ballistics, lessons. And so in that book, you're saying that he outlines what his solution is, and that's, so can you go through those 5 points again?
yeah, absolutely. Randy did so much information on, or in studying and research on this particular subject because his family lived the experience. And that's what happened with Eric and Dylan, that was suppressed and buried by the faculty and staff and also Jefferson County Police. Eric and Dylan were brutally abused 4 years by the varsity athletes. And it was completely ignored by the faculty and staff because the
And that's a
Columbine.
big claim. That's a big claim that you're
I,
making right
I
now.
know, yes, I know it's a big claim, but it's coming from them directly. This is coming not just from Brooks and Randy, but there's other students as well that I've been speaking to that have confirmed the abuse that went on in that school that has been buried by the mainstream media. And this this is what had Randy do the studying that he did. And based off of all of his studying that he has done, that every single school shooter, or at least 99% of them, and also this was confirmed by the United States Secret Service before I did my TED Talk. In 2004, the Secret Service confirmed that violent bullying and humiliation was the common denominator in all school shooters. And
Wow.
with Randy's research backed it up too. He said there's always 4 or 5 stages to a school shooter. Number one is bullying. Number two is humiliation. Then hypervigilance, and then violentization, where you start fantasizing about having violent thoughts.
Yeah.
And then finally, the last act is violence. And that is either internalized through suicide, which there's an epidemic of suicide as well, or it's externalized through school shootings. Those are
Because we
always the
know
5 stages.
we know that suicidal ideation can turn into homicidal ideation. And can you tell me one more time? You said the Secret Service said that
Yes,
there were two main
yes,
causes of school
yes,
shootings.
yes. 2004, the
Okay.
United States Secret Service did an independent investigation on school shootings because it was happening all the time. And this was in 2004,
That's what
before
I'm
20,
thinking.
before 2020, when there was an even bigger explosion of school shootings. In 2004, they did the research as towards why this is happening, and that was their conclusion. Violent bullying and humiliation was the common denominator in all school shooters.
I mean, and we've known this since 2004. And you can argue, well, it's 2025, and we know so much more after having learned from all of these mistakes that we've made throughout the years. But
Right.
I honestly don't think that anything has shifted. I think that what the Secret Service came up with is still accurate, and why we wouldn't then go and focus on bullying, violent bullying, and the humiliation that goes on in schools. That is what instinctively, despite the fact that our report was done and it found no sign of bullying in Sandy Hook, instinctively, I knew that Adam Lanza, who was the former student of Sandy Hook, who came back to the school,
Right.
in the same classrooms that he had gone to school in first grade, looking for soft targets, I instinctively knew that it was pain. And,
Yeah.
just a little tiny bit of research shows neglect. At the
Yes.
very least, I had two different people come up to me saying that they were classmates of Adam and saw him be bullied. Certainly, you can read about neglect, and all of these times that Adam basically cries for help and was ignored. Like that's the worst. That's the worst. And I kind of see that also in, after reading Brooks's book. Brooke is
Yes.
the friend of Eric and Dylan, who were the Columbine shooters. After reading his book, I see that in that scenario as well.
Yes, that is 100% the case. And I think it's because no one wants the scarlet letter on their body of they could have been complicit in creating a school shooter. Nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants that accountability.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to know that they could have played a part in a massacre. That's why
100%.
that,
But I mean,
that
like, what you want is for people to go to get curious and
yes,
go, wait a minute, I remember this and I could have done it
yep,
better. And so let's be honest about it. But in reality, I'm not sure how much honesty is being reported.
it's not. It's being covered up as is the you just stated with Adam Lanza with it being covered up of him not being bullied, and the same thing with Columbine High School. The whole narrative to this day is the boys liked violent video games. They listened to Marilyn Manson, and that's why they did what they did, which is a total cover up. They were pushed into a corner. They were abused for years. The faculty and staff knew it. And if we're going to talk about the list of what happened, here's the list: anti-Semitic death threats, hate crimes, civil rights violations, assault and battery, harassment, intimidation. Like the list just goes on and on of what
The
those boys
interesting thing
went through.
is you're talking about what happened to Eric Harris and
Right.
and Dylan Klebold. You're talking about what happened to the school shooters. You're not talking about what they did.
No, no, this is what happened to them by the varsity athletes. And that is the case, and that's why I talk about the social hierarchy, right? How a lot of people at the top undermine and abuse the people at the bottom.
I,
It,
I just have to say you're making that claim, but that's not in the final action report after the shooting. That's not, like that is what you're saying are eyewitness reports from other people that went to Columbine, but that's where you're making, because those are pretty harsh claims.
they are very harsh claims, but it's through the research. It's not just through the research of Brooks, but once you read Randy Brown's book, The Inside Story of Columbine, he explicitly states all of the information there as well. I've also been speaking to a couple of other students as well that also disclose this information that was buried completely by media and the police.
All right.
And
Well,
that's
I will say that Randy Brown, it's kind of interesting, and this will give credence to what you're saying. His
right.
son Brooks was actually threatened. His life was threatened by
Yes.
Harris. Eric Harris had a website, and this is
Right.
known, and he put up, those anti-Semitic things that you're talking about, his hatred for humanity, how
Right.
he literally posted, kill everyone, I want to kill everyone, multiple times. And then he also said,
Right.
like Brooks, I want to kill everyone like Brooks. And so obviously Brooks's parents went to the police, and the police got a search warrant for Eric's home. I guess there'd been a pipe bomb or something that he had also done previous to that, and the search warrant was never executed. And then Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold committed the Columbine school shooting. So when
Right.
you're talking about Randy Brown, who's the parent of Brooks, who was actually friends with Dylan and Eric and has received a lot of criticism about that. But Randy
Right.
actually has like made it his life's mission to
Yes.
go through his own police reports and what
Right.
the action that he did before the shooting,
Right.
because he knew that at least Eric was very dangerous, was making claims, was threatening to kill people, had bombs, and maybe even guns. I mean, I think that may have been known too. He had other people, older people, purchase guns for him. But so Randy, in my mind, is credible because he is also a parent of a child that was in Columbine, and that, you know, and I know that Randy feels terribly that with all of his efforts and everything that was known before Columbine, that
Right.
not enough action was taken to help Eric as well as Dylan. And
The, that
therefore, and then the shooting occurred and so many people lost their lives.
right.
And I know that it's hard for him to live with that, even
Of
though he
course.
did more than most.
Of course. And I know that he's suffering, and I know for a fact that the violent bullying was a systemic problem in that school. Even in Brooks Brown book, No Easy Answers, in one of the pages I distinctly remember, he was having a conversation with one of his classmates, and the classmate said, "Our school is primed for a school shooting."
Yeah.
Like they knew the culture in that school was sadistic and very abusive, and that's what drove the boys to the edge, is because there was no accountability, and there was no disciplinary action towards the varsity athletes that abused the boys. It was passively dismissed, it was covered up, and anything that was done against them, it was there was no action. Nothing was done. So the boys developed an extraordinary amount of hatred that built up over time, that they finally unleashed one fateful day.
I mean,
And
I
that's
always say, like, if you could imagine creating a website and talking about what's inside you, how you want to
right,
kill people, and that's
right,
how angry you are, how you hate everyone in society. And this is
right,
public,
right.
and not even the police care enough, really, truly,
Yeah,
to approach, and actually they did approach, but to take action. And you know, that makes you feel worthless. If
yes,
I'm gonna be, you know,
exactly.
and actually, Adam Lanza did the same thing when he was in fifth grade. He wrote a story and brought it to school. It was called The Book of Granny, where a witch has a broomstick that opens into a semi-automatic weapon and murders children. Nothing was
Right.
ever said to Adam. So can you imagine that your teachers know this about you? So in other words, they know the amount of pain that you're in, or even anger and hatred. Yet you matter so little that nobody even has a conversation with you about it. Like, I can't even imagine. I know that bullying is awful. You call it abuse, and I know that it does go to abuse, but then you have neglect, and you have
Yeah,
just, you know,
yes,
complete dismissal and ignoring people. And I think that's literally the worst form of abuse.
yeah. It got me flashbacks of that moment in the principal's office where she said it's okay to be gay. You
Yeah.
know, like there was no protection from the adults.
Yeah.
They almost didn't care. It's not their problem. You know, it's not my child. That is what it is. And
And
that's
then
kind
you
of
went
an
on to try to take your life after that. And then
yes,
what did your life look like after that? And how did you get to be here where you're working on a project to put all of this together, because ultimately you want people to know the truth.
yes, 100%.
And so how did that trajectory happen?
That's a really good question. After that particular fateful day when I was 8 years old in elementary school, I sunk into depression and sadness and hatred for just years and years and years, and I just harbored it inside. The
Hatred for
only
yourself?
Yeah, hatred for myself and life in general. I go like, life sucks. You know, what's the purpose of existence if it's just suffering? Every single day is just pure suffering. Like, what is the point of living? You know, I didn't care about it anymore. And the only thing that kept me from going over the edge was nature. I've always loved nature. My parents had a house close by the lake. Every single night I would go watch the sunset, and there was peace. Walking in the woods, walking my dog. I taught myself how to play the piano, working out. I would just find these forms of just having peace within myself. And that is what helped me not go over that particular cliff. So fast forward to now, there's a lot that happened in between then and now. But I really had a calling a few years ago to really do something about this because I just seen the skyrocket, and especially since COVID, the skyrocketing rates of suicides and school shootings just go through the roof.
And
And I'm
social
saying,
media, and so you know
right,
the
yeah,
introduction
yeah,
of social media, which
yes.
really kind
So social media just added more fuel to
yeah,
the fire because before, back in the day, the humiliation stopped when the bell rung, right? But now it doesn't anymore. Now the humiliation continues in chat groups, text messages, online,
before seven,
verbal harassment, just nonstop. And
right?
that's why we've had such a massive increase in suicides because there's so much hatred breeding between the students. They're just bouncing this hatred off of each other, not knowing what to do. There's no emotional regulations. There's no emotional intelligence. There's no life skills taught at all.
Right.
So seeing this crescendo of violence happening in the past couple of years, I just my lid blew. I'm like I'm tired of this. I'm tired of nothing being actually done about this. Every time a school shooting happens, it's the same story. Oh, it's the guns. Let's control the guns. Thoughts and prayers, and then
It's really
silence.
weird. It's like very
Right.
eerie that I look around and it's like parents kind of just seem numb to it, and
Yeah.
it'll never happen to my child, even though
Right.
there's a chance, a small chance, but if it can happen in Sandy Hook or Columbine, it can happen anywhere. And then I think that people feel like there's nothing they can do. And so I feel it's like the ultimate powerlessness that they feel. And so I that's what I'm, because my message has been, there is something that we can do. You can
Yes.
empower yourselves.
Strength that we can rise above. I choose love.
Hey there, listeners. Are you feeling the weight of the world? Well, you're not alone. The U.S. Surgeon General says nearly 50% of parents are overwhelmed by stress. And guess what? It's affecting us all. Just last year, we heard about an epidemic of loneliness hitting half our population, especially young adults. But there's hope. I'm Scarlett Lewis, founder of the Choose Love movement. We're dedicated to your safety, health, and well-being with proactive mental health strategies. Imagine a life where stress and loneliness are replaced by joy and connection. We've already reached millions with essential life skills to prevent violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. Want to join this life-changing movement? It's easy. Visit chooselovemovement.org today. Become a member, spread the word, and access our free resources. Together, we can create a loving, supportive community. Remember, all the nurturing, healing love you give comes back to you tenfold. Thank you for choosing love.
I choose love. I choose love.
And so I want to
Yes.
talk now, Mark, about the hero protocol that you have and just kind of get into that, because
Absolutely.
it's interesting. This is kind of a different take on what the issues are, and even what they go over in school safety conferences, which I have spoken in.
Right.
What the Secret Service came out with in 2004, which is violent bullying and humiliation. I mean, that should be first and foremost. And I think that the protocols that schools have are more in line with punishment than
Yeah.
actually helping someone. And that's not to say there aren't amazing schools and educators and administrators, because I work with them every single day.
Yes.
Obviously, this still is a huge issue, and something obviously we haven't figured out how to stop school shootings, and our kids are losing confidence in us to be able to do that.
Right.
And as adults, it is our responsibility to keep children safe and safeguard their well-being. So you think that this hero protocol can do that? Can you go over that with us?
Yes, I will. We've essentially lost our humanity. And that's the big question that nobody is asking. You know how like Alcoholics Anonymous, the first rule is admitting you have a problem.
Mhm.
We are not, as a nation, willing to admit the root problem of why school shootings continue. We want to put a label on it of guns, and it's the guns' fault when it's the kids that are brutalizing each other. So
Mark,
because
we have to
we're
blame somebody. I mean, it's not my
exactly right.
fault. So whose fault is it? Come
No,
on.
we
Guns is
need
perfect.
we need drastic, massive accountability. That's step number one.
Yeah.
Once we actually recognize why this is actually happening, then we can begin the healing process, right? Step two, and going back towards what you were saying, is the hero protocol. I remember I was in the gym in the sauna, and I was having a conversation with this gentleman there who was a history teacher at his school. He was a history teacher, but also a football coach. And he told me something that just, it blew my mind. I was like, wow, this is so simple, but so effective. He says he has something called the hero protocol that he instills on his varsity athletes. Every single year, after the students are chosen to be on the team and they all celebrate, whatever, he has a big meeting with them afterwards. And he says to them, you boys are now a role model for your peers. And some of you that get the privilege of playing college ball, even more of a role model. And then the select few of you that go on to play professionally, guess what? Millions and millions and millions of kids are going to be looking up to you. They want to be you. So now that you know that, it's time that you learn a lesson in humility, because it's not just about the money. It's not just about the accolades. It's not just about the trophies. It's about how you treat each other. So your rule that I'm instilling on you to be a part of this team is not just working and busting your butt and to be the best of the best. You must be kind to your other fellow students. Your job is to go to those students who are by themselves. If you're in the cafeteria and you see a boy sitting by himself and you know he's alone, he's ostracized, he's the outcast, I want you to sit with him. I want you to talk with him. I want you to make him feel like a human being. I'm not asking you to be best friends with him. I'm just asking you to make him feel heard, make him
Mm.
feel seen.
Mm.
That alone had a massive impact on those particular students. He says he's been doing this protocol for almost 10 years now. And those students that were the outcasts, that were introverted, that were very quiet, that were
Mhm.
miserable, since instilling this protocol, they started showing up to classes. They started smiling. They started talking more. They started
Mm.
just being more cheerful. Like you have no idea what's going on through somebody's head. But I promise you, those kids that are sitting by themselves in the cafeteria, generally speaking, they're the ones that are the future shooters because they're going through the massive suffering. You are diffusing the bomb before it has a chance to go off.
Wow, that's powerful, Mark. And, from the conversations I have had with former school shooters, every single one of them says that they do not feel seen. And from, what I've read from Brooks's book, I would say that that definitely was Eric Harris. I mean, even his parents didn't see him for truly the suffering that he was in. And
Yes.
and so, it holds true for that as well. Okay, so humility, amazing. What's E? E in
What's what?
hero. What's E in hero? The hero protocol.
Oh, what is E?
Yeah.
Enlightenment. That's just that is the awareness of being aware. That's essentially what that term means. Once you pull yourself out of the primitive brain, because our brain has multiple layers to it, right? And most humans are driven by the amygdala, which is fight or flight.
Mhm.
And back in the day, in the woods, you needed that. There's a bear, you better run from the bear, otherwise the bear is going to eat you, right? But now it's no longer the bear in the woods. Now it's the kid's too tall, too short, too skinny, too fat, too white, too black, Jew, Christian, Muslim. The kids are operating from a primitive, primal behavior, and they're bouncing that negative energy towards each other. The enlightenment portion of that is increasing your awareness to rise above that animalistic behavior, activating your prefrontal cortex, that for empathy, intuition, will, memory, these higher cognitive functions live in this higher state. But that requires a specific choice, love. That dissolves you and brings you out of hatred and brings you to a higher state. And the love naturally increases that compassion and empathy and understanding towards one another.
Yeah, you know, we have a formula that returns your location of your personal power inside you where you can choose love. We have a model where you pause. If somebody says or does something that triggers you, you pause because everything, you know, it's filtered through the amygdala first, which is 4 times faster than the prefrontal cortex, your executive functioning. The pause to take a breath, we call it a brave breath, and get curious,
Yes.
which gives
Yes.
time for that information to hit here where where the brake on your instinctual reactions is, and where you can choose love as a thoughtful response instead of reacting in the moment, escalating the situation, making yourself feel worse. You can pause, and it takes courage,
Yes.
and you can choose forgiveness or compassion to thoughtfully respond as your highest and best self. So that would really fit in the enlightenment stage,
Yes.
I have to say. And then you've got R.
Respect. When you treat each other with dignity and respect, there are no school shootings. It really is that simple. It really is. You know, like we want to overcomplicate what this is, and it's not. It's simply treating each other as human beings the way we want to treat each other. It really is that simple.
I just wrote an op-ed that said, could it be this simple? Could it be this simple? And I think all the best answers are so simple. They don't need hundreds of millions of dollars in budget,
Yeah.
or even law changes. You know what I mean? They're just
Right.
simple, and they're things that we can enact within ourselves every single day that we can model, and we can begin to shift towards the solution. I totally believe that, and I'm 100% on board. So, what is O?
O is a 2-for-1 special. It's ongoing mindfulness. So it's simply taking these concepts and building a habit out of it every single day. Just like you shower every day, you work out every day, whatever it is, whatever your habits are every day. This is the process of fortifying these habits to become a higher, better version of yourself.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. So that is the hero protocol,
Yes.
starting with humility, enlightenment, respect, and ongoing mindfulness. I mean, it sounds like a really great way to live. It sounds
Yes.
simple and
Yes.
doable. It
Yes.
takes effort, yes, but of course, it takes effort to be the best version of yourself, to choose love over fear every single day, which I think is our biggest challenge every day, certainly mine.
Yes.
And yeah, that's really beautiful. And so you're working now to bring all of this kind of together to pull out the truth that you
Yes.
think is behind school shootings, to solve them once and for all, because no one's been able to do it. You know, up
Right.
until now, I think it's not controversial to say that we learn from mistakes, and those
Right.
are very costly lessons because they cost children and educator lives.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
you know, and so it always made sense to me to try to address the other end of the pathway to violence, as per the Department of Homeland Security, that starts with a grievance and ends in an attack. A lot
Yes.
of our time, energy, and money is spent on this attack end, and of course, by then it's too late. And
Yep.
so what the Choose Love movement is doing is working before the grievance. So
Yes.
in other words, on the enlightenment in hero, but attempting, giving the essential life skills needed to be able to diffuse the anger and the pain before it escalates into hatred and violence. And I think that we need to focus there. the focus has not been enough on that. And that is
Yes.
simple stuff.
Yep.
It can be done at home. Absolutely. It can be done in schools. I have to tell you that as a parent with 2 kids, I didn't have a lot of emotional intelligence. I wasn't really taught that by my parents. I certainly didn't wasn't taught it in school or at work. And so, I've learned it through developing my program, but that gives me kind of this unique insight into the fact that we all need to be working on this every single day. And
Yes.
if you think you've mastered it in one situation, I'm speaking personally, then
Mhm.
life throws you a curveball and you have to take
Right.
it. But at least you have a tool belt of skills that you can take out and you can look at and you can thoughtfully respond in your highest and best self. And
Yes.
it's so important. I just, I really appreciate your efforts. I think that finding the truth is becoming more and more difficult every day with social media and bots and
Yes.
everything like that. And I think it's a constant effort. I think it's really important. I appreciate anybody who is trying to search for the truth, because that's what I've been doing also for the past 13 years. Taking the road less traveled and being proactive and preventative instead of reactive and adding to the problem.
That's it. Once we switch the entire mindset to prevention versus reaction, then we will finally stop this crisis once and for all. But it can only happen once we actually make that shift. That's why I produced my film. That's why I'm talking to some people to turn it into a feature. That's why I'm wanting to create a docuseries on what really happened at Columbine. We will never heal from this and move forward from this unless we address why this is happening. We are dealing with a consciousness crisis, a humanity crisis, and unless we change each other, once we uplift each other, only once we do these things will we be able to stop this big monster once and for all. If we don't, if we just continue to pour into defense and reaction, school shootings will continue forever, and that's a horrible thought. You know, I
I'll
don't want this
add
to
to
happen.
that thought. I'll
Go
add
ahead.
to it. If we don't start focusing more on proactive prevention, I believe they'll not only continue, but the pain, the anger, the hatred will increase.
Yeah, it'll just get worse, and it's like, how many more tragedies do we need? How many more innocent children need to die or teachers need to die? Like, how many more deaths do we need until we finally address why this is happening? We are suffering truly as a human species, as a human race. We're going through a crisis. We have all the technology in the world, but how we treat each other has gone out the window. Only once we address that and how we treat each other will we actually solve this. And that's why I'm so honored to have this conversation with you, with Randy as well, because we're looking at it from a prevention standpoint, because that's where the solution actually lies.
And I'm looking forward to doing a podcast with Randy. I hope he agrees to do that with me once I read his book.
Yeah.
Mark, this has been really eye-opening. I'm sure maybe even a little shocking for people that are listening. It certainly was for me. But you continue to do research. You have police reports. You have after action reports that you're looking at. Certainly, the documentary is going to be based on facts that are known.
Yes. Yes.
So I would, do you have any parting words for the audience? And anybody that's listening to the Choose Love podcast is most likely an educator or a parent, or actually somebody that is involved in school safety, that's wanting to keep our kids safe, that aligns with the message of Choose Love, which is proactive and preventative. Do you have any final words for us, and maybe where we can learn more about you and what we can be doing in the meantime?
Just be involved. like really be involved in the students' lives. Do not passively dismiss bullying. It is such a destructive thing that is happening within our youth, and that's why they are destroying each other. Like truly teach empathy, kindness, love, compassion, the basic things that we seem to have lost as a society. We need to get back to those roots. Once we get back to those roots and we can have a fundamental shift of how we treat each other, can we actually stop this once and for all? So while I'm focusing on trying to change legislation to have like Montessori and Waldorf education and SEL, emotional intelligence, etc., but path in all of our schools. In the meantime, teach your kids to really be kind, to love, to respect, and to defend each other. And if they see something happening, say something. Don't just stand by and watch, because that's how it escalates, and that's how it turns into a tragedy. So just really be involved, really care, and realize that you have more power than you realize when you truly get involved in your children's lives.
That's beautiful, Mark. And I know I said that was the final thing, but I just have one more question.
Yeah,
Just
go for it.
what do you think is wrong with the anti-bullying programming? Because I believe that it's mandatory in middle and high school. And I'm thinking maybe some people are thinking that, well, we already have anti-bullying programs in all of our schools. Actually, I hear that it's mandatory in middle school. I've been hearing that not so much in high school anymore. But what would you say
Right.
is wrong with those programs? How come they're not working? If you say that violent bullying, humiliation is the root cause, why aren't those anti-bullying programs that we pay, by the way, millions, maybe even billions of dollars to teach kids every year? How come that's not working?
That's a really fantastic question. I'm glad you brought that up. I watched another TED Talk about a year ago as I was studying for mine on this. And she did a research that across the nation, there's approximately 1,400 anti-bullying policies. Out of those 1,400, 80 of them were effective. The rest of them didn't mean a thing. It's because telling a kid, "Oh, don't hurt the other kid, otherwise you're going to be punished." That's not how the brain works. You have to understand why the kids are wanting to hurt each other to begin with, right? And that's because they are driven by the amygdala, fight or flight. That's what drives the separation factor automatically and unconsciously. Unless we switch that programming of how the kids behave towards one another, anti-bullying policies will never do anything. Even if they pretend to behave in the school, the second the bell rings and they go home, that's when the harassment continues. It is a full-blown educational shift that has to happen within the kids. That's why I advocate so deeply for emotional intelligence, because schools like Montessori, like Waldorf, Yale has something called the Ruler program, where it stands for recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions. Inside of these programs, violent bullying and humiliation is virtually zero. Not one school shooter has ever come from these academies, because they teach holistic learning. It's not just metrics and standards, it's humanity. Once we start instilling humanity back to the human species, we can start having true accountability for each other and how we treat each other. That's why we have to change the very roots and fabric of this entire problem, because that's what it comes down to. It is the roots. Trying to put an anti-bullying policy is a band-aid on a gashing wound. It's
Yeah.
not going to. You have to fix the roots.
I totally agree. Addressing the root. That's why, and by the way, that's why our programming for all ages and stages from pre-K through 12th grade is no cost, Mark, because
Beautiful.
because those programs that you mentioned, they're very expensive. And
Right.
my child was priced out of the market, as was Adam Lanza. So I thought,
Right.
oh my gosh, I need to create something that's effective, that's the best of the best, and I'm going to make it no cost, because every child should have access to this. Price should
No.
not be an option. So
And you're absolutely right. Sadly, only wealthy families can afford these programs. What you're doing is so beautiful. I consider you an angel, and I think your program should be in every single school in the United States, or some variation of it, to actually do something about this, because that is where the solution lies. And I'm so thankful for the movement that you have created, because it is so powerful and accessible.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mark. This is our first conversation, but we will be continuing these. I love introducing you to our Choose Love audience. And thanks for everything that you're doing as well. Look forward to what comes for you in the future. And for everybody listening, thank you so much. So you got your marching orders from Mark. Go out and be good humans. Model this for other people. Be
Yes.
thoughtfully respond in situations and circumstances and interactions with kindness, caring, and love. And you are part of the solution. So thank you so much for choosing love.